Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our final Lunch and Learn of the season of the year. I'm Matt Harrington, the Executive Director of the Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce. Hopefully you've joined us for the full year of Lunch and Learns. This is just one way that we feel as a chamber we're providing our members with useful information, whether that's how to run social media, how to set up a bank account, or today, how to utilize solar and energy to benefit your business. And we're so happy to have two new members to the chamber on this Lunch and Learn today. And we're pleased to welcome Thomas and Pete, and we'll talk a little bit about what they're doing. But I want to give much of the show over to them as possible. We do have to thank Heritage Family Credit Union for sponsoring this season of Lunch and Learns, and of course our trusty partners over at Cat TV, who have worked with us for many, many years on broadcasting this. So thanks, Mike Cutler and the Cat TV staff. MHG Solar, this is about off-site solar in Vermont and how it works and how your business might be able to save money by participating. Co-owners Thomas Hand and Pete Geis will provide an overview of the available solar programs in Vermont and how they can benefit your business. Pretty exciting stuff. I had a chance to talk with Thomas a couple of weeks ago, and so I think this is going to be important for many of our members and businesses. In today's Lunch and Learn, particular focus will be paid to how businesses with substantial electric expenditures can save money on their electric bill and the various approaches available in the market of business. So I'm very happy to welcome Thomas and Pete to Lunch and Learn. And guys, take it away.
Thank you, Matt. Wanted to start off just thanking you for giving us this opportunity to speak with all the chamber members. So thank you, Matt, and thank you to the chamber. So let's get started. So just to give a quick background on MHG and myself, I'm Thomas Hand and my partner, Pete Geis. So we started MHG in 2017, and we really started with a focus on developing solar projects on previously used industrial land. So we went out and looked for sites that had been previously used and in many cases pretty heavily used. So industrial sites, quarries, in particular slate quarries, and then also gravel pits and some industrial land. So to date, we have built about 9.5 megawatts worth of solar in Vermont. So that's 9,500 kilowatts. And that's enough to serve about 2,000 Vermont homes. So just quickly, I grew up in Dorset, Vermont, and went to Dorset Elementary School and then on to Burn Burton and Middlebury. And then after working in Vermont for a couple of years doing energy efficiency work and some small solar installations, I completed an MBA at Stanford, and then spent a number of years working in the San Francisco Bay Area for energy companies. So Nest, Enernoc, and SunEdison. And Pete and I met at SunEdison, which is a large solar developer, and we developed a number of projects, in particular in Minnesota. We worked together and did a couple hundred megawatts worth of projects there. And that experience working together and working on those projects led us to found MHG and strike out on our own to develop solar projects in Vermont. I'll let Pete say a couple words just about himself.
Yeah, first, again, thanks for the opportunity. And I think Thomas covered MHG pretty well. I think we always set out to do quality solar projects, but I think what makes us a little bit unique is both where our interest is in innovation and land use, in structuring of deals, and trying to really take solar from a lot of what we did in our early days, which was sort of stock and trade, long-term contracts, on-site projects. We did a lot of that work over the past decade and saw that it wasn't working for a broad segment of businesses and potential customers. So when we started MHG, the idea was continue the quality development of projects, but try to find a way to do things a little bit differently, use the land differently, be more thoughtful with that, find a way to get different customers involved. And that was really why we started our own development company, because it was hard to do that within the confines of what the industry was pushing forward. And solar's been great. The development's been good, but there have been some people who've been left out in the in the push forward, and some types of development that aren't maybe as in harmony with the communities as they should be. So that's been our background. In mine, I grew up working on a dairy farm in Wisconsin. I think I've carried that with me kind of throughout life. And that's how Thomas and I viewed this business. And I think you'll see through this short presentation what we've tried to do to be a little bit different and a little more accessible to hopefully some of you folks who are watching, and frankly, people in every market that we take projects to. So I'll step back and happy to answer questions, but that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Pete. All right, so jumping right in Vermont, there are really two programs that the vast majority of solar projects have been developed under. So just focusing first, there's a program called the Standard Offer Program. These are larger projects. Developers competitively bid them. So when I say larger, I mean 15 to 20 acres worth of panels, about 3 megawatts worth of capacity. So these projects are competitively bid. Each year there's a procurement, and then the power is sold directly to the utilities. For the last couple of years, the rates for those projects have been less than 10 cents kilowatt hour. So that power is relatively very low cost. And there's a handful of those projects built per year. So as an example, there is a project, if you're heading north on Route 7 up near the Rutland Airport, there's one on the right-hand side there. It's a project roughly of that size. So that's one program. That program, because the power is sold directly to the utilities, homeowners and businesses, aren't directly involved. The power is sold from the solar project to the utilities. The utilities bundle that up with all the other power that they procure, and they provide it to Vermont ratepayers. The second type of program where we really want to focus today's attention is net metering. So net metering projects are solar projects, and it's probably the ones that you are familiar with or you've seen on rooftops or in people's backyards. So within net metering, we've really got three categories, three types of projects. We have residential projects up to 15 kilowatts. So just to give you a sense, that's something in the neighborhood of 40 to maybe 50 panels would get you up to about 15 kilowatts. So residential systems, and then also rooftop systems are one category. And then from there, we move to ground mounted systems that range from that 40 to 50 panels up to about 10 times that, 150 kW, kilowatts. And then the larger size ground mounted projects are 150 kW to 500 kW. And most of what Pete and I have focused on have been those larger ground mounted net metering projects. So when we go out and look for a site, we're looking to try to do typically a 500 kW project. It allows us to get some economies of scale, and it allows us to provide quite a bit of power from one location. And just to give you a sense, those projects are typically in the 3 to 4 acre range, and about 2,000 panels is that 500 kW. Okay, so just quickly, net metering, how it works, regardless of what size net metering project, they really all function under the same program, and they receive very similar rates for the power that they produce. So net metering, how does it work? It's quite simple. Really, you have a solar project, sun comes out, it produces power. Some of that power is consumed by the home or the business where the solar project is located. The power that isn't consumed flows back through the electric meter that home or business has. And when it flows through that meter, Green Mountain Power, who's the utility for our part of Vermont, takes that power production, applies a rate to it, and converts it to a dollar credit. So kilowatt hours of solar energy are produced, they flow back onto the grid. Green Mountain Power creates a dollar credit and then says, where would you like us to assign these credits? And in the case of a homeowner, they would say, well, just put it back on my own bill. I've got power on my roof and I use some of it, and whatever I don't use goes back into the grid. And then the net in net metering is they use those credits up themselves. In the case of let's take a 500 kW system that we locate on a gravel pit, slate quarry, industrial land, typically there's not much load there at the project. So when we produce power, going back to the top point here, we produce power, it flows out through a meter because almost none of it is consumed on the site, just a tiny amount to run the system. So the vast majority of the power goes out onto the grid. Green Mountain Power converts those kilowatt hours of solar power to dollar credits. And then they say, where would you like us to send these credits? And so what we do is we look for businesses, nonprofits, municipalities who are interested in purchasing those credits from our solar projects and using that credit on their electric bill. So we'll move to the next slide here, and I'll just give you an example of how that works, what the actual mechanism is. Okay, so what I have here is a customer's bill. You can see on the right-hand side there in highlight, it's from March of this year. And then you see this laundry list of various charges from Green Mountain Power. And this is a customer that is receiving credits from one of our solar projects. So on the bottom left-hand side there, you see a couple line items that have been highlighted. So that is the credit that the customer is receiving. So if you just, you could do the math yourself here, but just kind of work through it. You see a number of charges, and then you see some line item credits for the solar project. So those are credits that we are providing to this customer. They show up on the customer's bill, and we bill the customer once they have received those credits. So power is produced, it flows out onto the grid, GMP creates a credit, that credit is assigned to this electric bill, and then that customer's GMP bill is reduced. So here you'll see the very bottom line item, there's the new charges for this customer was $451. And obviously it would be significantly higher, but for the solar credits. So what you see, just the handwriting here on the lower right side, that's the total credits that were delivered. The customer saves 7.5%. And then that payable line, the $2,298, is the amount that they would pay back to MHG for the credits that they received. So the customer in this case is receiving 7.5% savings for the credits that they purchase from our solar project. So what I just described is how net metering works, how we bill our customers. And what I want to talk about a little bit here, and Pete, feel free to chime in as well, because you alluded to some of this at the beginning, is the structure of our contract. So, and again, Pete spoke to this a little bit, but historically solar contracts were quite different than what I just described to you, where you save 7.5%. Historically, it was sign up for 25 years, and here's a fixed price for power that you will pay to the solar project, regardless of what the utility rates do. They could go up, they could go down, but it's a fixed price. So the solar project benefits because they have a 25-year contract, so they know they're going to receive payment for the power they produce, and they know what rate it will be set at. And that works well for the solar project. But the problem is, to be able to underwrite that contract, you need to have a customer that has a high degree of certainty that they, meaning a business or nonprofit or municipality, has a high degree of certainty that they will be around for 25 years and that their power consumption will stay relatively constant for 25 years. Now, there are a number of businesses and municipalities that fit that criteria. Schools, which we've done a number of projects with, do fit that criteria. We can be fairly confident, and the school can be fairly confident that they will be around for 25 years and probably quite a bit longer than that. So for some customers, that traditional contract structure works very well. But for many businesses, 25 years is a long time. I have some gray hair, and Pete probably has some there as well. 25 years for an individual running a business is a long time. It's a very difficult thing to make a commitment and to know that you will be in business, that you will be using a certain amount of power 25 years from now. So this was a problem that we came across early in our career when we were doing projects in Minnesota and California and other places. And there just weren't a lot of good solutions. And so when we started MHG, we were really focused on trying to find a way to allow solar to work for businesses that didn't have the structure or the luxury of being able to make a 25-year commitment. So what we were able to come up with and what we've been able to do over the last year and a half really is to provide business and nonprofits with a contract structure where they can save 7.5% for each credit that they receive, and they can exit the contract with 6 months notice. So what we are doing on the back end is matching up a number of customers to take all the power from our projects, and then allowing our customers, if they need to, they can leave. And we will wear the risk of finding a replacement customer to take that power. So I'm simplifying quite a bit, because on the back end, we have to do a fair amount of work to make sure that we always have customers. But from our customers' perspective, is a much simpler structure, and it doesn't require projecting 25 years out into the future. And as you can imagine, in the last 8 months that we've all lived through, it's difficult to predict the future. And so we've tried to create an offer that allows people to have both the benefit of solar and also flexibility to run their business or do whatever they have to do out into the future. And then in some, I'll mention this just briefly, but historically in solar contracts, there were often fees or penalties or things like that for leaving. So just to be clear, when we say you could leave after 6 months notice to us, there's no fees, there's no penalties. The point is to just make it very, very simple. If you need to leave the contract for whatever reason and no longer receive credits, that's fine. It's sort of a no questions asked, no fees, no problem, best of luck.
Yeah, and I would just add back to this structure really that this is sort of growing out of two things, right? It's the maturity of an industry. So as solar got started, 2 decades ago, but really larger scale financed solar solutions that allow the power to be sold to people at a cost-effective rate, that is growing. So the industry itself at the high level is becoming more well tested, right? And so with that, you start to see the asset class in general is just able to be a little bit more creative. And then with Thomas and I specifically at the local level, it's been a growth both of seeing the pain with our customers and people who want to participate, but even just 2 years ago would have been very hard for us to say, yes, we can do this structure. It's something we've been working on in the background because we saw the hurdle. But in order to really make it work, you need a fairly large number of quality projects that are going to produce. You need a number in your portfolio. You need to really have the machine sort of ramped up to be able to handle this, because what our goal here is to take the risk of solar and put it where we think it should be, which is on the solar company. The customers who are getting the benefit shouldn't have to guess at what electricity rates are going to be 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now. We're in that business. We should wear that. We should be the ones who have to build a quality solar project that produces credits and is obligated to maintain and operate it. That's our business, and we're built to do it. And so this shift has really been towards that. And I think the analogy that Thomas and I think about is, in real estate, we think that we're trying to build high quality apartments that are near transit and and useful where people want to rent them. And occasionally somebody, for any number of reasons, may have to leave, but they're not going to leave because the product we're offering isn't compelling, right? Here, what we're trying to do is offer something that's very, very clean and predictable in the savings standpoint. You only pay MHG if we delivered savings to you effectively. And if something changes in your business that you just have to leave, we're not this big hammer on top of you that's trying to make that decision hard, right? So we've tried to make it very simple. In the background, it's really the outgrowth of a decade of both the industry evolving and our own business evolving to be able to manage a structure like this. And we've seen people respond well to it. But it is a step in what we think is the right direction for sort of being a little more innovative on participation.
Great. Thanks, Pete. So we wanted to just end and move to questions if there are any, and also just provide a couple photos and quick description of some of the recent projects. So one of the first projects, top left there, is Route 149 Solar. So that is out at Newmont Slate in Pollitt, right before you head into Granville, up on top of an old slate dump. The next one, as you move to the right, so top line center, is Shields Drive in Bennington. So that's in the industrial park there. And then top right, Dirt Road Solar is a project that was also done with Newmont Slate. That one is in Poultney. That project went operational. All three of those at the top went operational about a year ago. And then bottom left, Eagle Quarry is a project in Poultney as well. And that one went operational end of last year. Warren Switch Road is the bottom center one. And that's a shot from a drone up in the air. So that project was on a slate quarry. It's in Pollitt, Vermont. And that's the most recent one that we turned on. So that went online this summer in August. That was our first COVID project, if you will. We started construction right at the beginning of the year, and then everybody put their tools down and walked away for quite a while, as I'm sure many of you all had to do as well. So we were delayed a little bit on that one, but only by a couple months, and we got that online, and it's now producing power, and it's been a great project. And then bottom right here is Briar Hill Solar. That project, as I was just saying to Matt earlier today, we're going to be turning that one on in the next week or two. And we're hoping for some sunny weather to complete all our commissioning tests. So that project is on a high up on a old slate dump, also in Pollitt, Vermont. And if you zoom in a little bit there, you can see in the background some of Granville, New York there. So it's quite close to the border. And that project is going to be online very shortly. So, Matt, I don't know if you've been watching, if there are any questions that have come in.
Yeah, and I do want to offer that we do have the opportunity. If you're watching on Facebook, we have a couple people on Facebook watching this. So if you do have questions, please ask away. One question that I have, Thomas and Pete, you'd kind of mentioned there are two buckets. There's the individual who might have some stuff on their home, and then there's business, nonprofits, and municipalities. Any way or reason why an individual who's watching this couldn't or shouldn't also take advantage of this? Let's say they're in, I don't know, in an apartment or in a downtown area where they can't get solar for some reason on their house. Can they participate in something like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Pete, they can participate. There's nothing in the program rules that would prohibit them from participating. Pete and I have really geared our business towards nonprofits and businesses, folks that use a significant amount of power. And that is, quite simply just driven from an administrative perspective. We're delivering credits to all the businesses that we work with, and on a monthly basis, we're providing them bills. Somebody that uses 10, 20, 50, $100,000 worth of power a year, it's quite a bit easier for us to work with those size businesses. versus residential where you might, maybe $100, $150, $80 a month, something like that. So that's just sort of a business decision that we have made. The one other thing I will mention is that the way the net metering program works, and I'll click back here just a couple slides to make this point. So at the top here of this list of GMP charges, you see 4 items actually in green. So the customer charge, that's really just the charge for having electric service. And then you've got some other fixed fees here. Those ones that are in green are what's called non-bypassable charges. So those are charges that you cannot use solar credits to offset. Mm-hmm. And so for the average homeowner, a significant portion of their bill is actually these non-bypassable charges. So for a homeowner, it might be $20 to $30 a month in non-bypassable. So if you're a homeowner and you have, say, let's say you were renting, for example, or maybe a small house, small apartment, and your electric bill is $60 a month. Well, half of that perhaps is going to be these non-bypassable charges. And so unfortunately, the way the program has been set up, only about half of your electric bill is eligible for solar credits. And it just becomes, not quite as valuable compared to, say, look at this commercial customer we have here as the example. We can offset 85, 90% of their bill with solar credits, whereas a small residential, we might only be able to do 50%.
Great. And a follow-up question from me. And again, if you're watching on Facebook and you have questions for Thomas or Pete, just put them in the comment bar. We're monitoring those. We're happy to ask them. On the other side of things, what if I have some land, or maybe the direct question is, how do you go and find your development locations? Are they always kind of stayed, or how do you rent, or do you purchase? And what if I have some land I'd love to sell you, which I don't, but.
Well, we've done both from the perspective of, what do we look for? And then there's also a question of how do you structure it? So maybe I'll start with the structuring. We have leased land. We have also purchased land. It really comes down to what the landowner is looking for. In some cases, somebody says, well, I have 100 acres and you want to use 4 or 5 of them for solar. Great. Well, I got my house here or my business. I want to keep the land. And so we say, okay, well, we can do a lease. But if it's, hey, I've got 10 acres and you're going to do, solar on 5 of them, I don't really want to keep the rest of that there and only have half the land and have a long-term lease. In a case like that, it's more common that we would purchase the land. So we can do either there. And then as far as how we find land or diligence land, for us, it's actually pretty straightforward. Maybe that's because we have a fair amount of experience with it, but really we're looking for land that meets a couple of different criteria. One, it needs to be accessible by road. So we don't want to have to try to build a road, out through the forest to a parcel. That's not very cost effective. So it needs to be relatively close to existing infrastructure. Roads is the most obvious one. Second is the electric grid. Most homes are served by single phase power. So that's going to be one wire or 2 wires coming in. Most larger businesses would be served by 3-phase power. So if you're driving down the road and you look up at a power pole and you see 3 wires running across the top of it, that's 3-phase. So when we go to build a solar project, we need 3-phase power because we're going to be moving a fair amount of energy. And to do that, we need 3-phase. So we look for proximity to roads, proximity to 3-phase power, and then we look for the topography of the land. Is it sloped? Is it undulating? Is it flat? Ideally, we would like something that's relatively flat. And then a very important criteria, and one that we spend a lot of time on, partly because it's more subjective, but it's just very important in Vermont, is the aesthetics. How visible is the project going to be to neighbors, to visitors to the area? And we really try to find locations where the project is either entirely invisible, and that's true for many of our slate quarry projects, or we have a project under development right now. It's bordered on 3 sides by forest, and no one can see it through those forests. And then on the other side, there's a road. And so we're going to plant some trees and some shrubs to screen the project. So visibility is a very important criteria in Vermont. And as we have seen more solar developed, that criteria has become more and more important. So I mentioned earlier that project up on Route 7 north going towards Rutland by the airport. You wouldn't be able to build that project today from a visibility perspective. That was one of the early projects, and many people have said, I don't like how that looks. It's a reasonable point of view. And so today, if you took that project through permitting, it wouldn't be awarded a permit. So we have to be much more conscious of how we site projects today than we did 5 years ago.
Okay. Great. Well, I want to thank you again, Thomas and Pete. Where can people get a hold of you? Obviously, they can come through the Chamber of Commerce. We have your contact information, but is there a good website? Or there you go, emails too.
Yep. So here's our email. Our website is just mhgsolar.com. Our phone numbers are on the website. But yeah, feel free to reach out, phone, email. We would be happy to talk with anyone, both on businesses, nonprofits, municipalities, or also landowners that might be interested in trying to do a project on their land.
Great. Well, on behalf of the Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce, I want to thank you for taking the time today to provide this opportunity for many of our members. For those members, if you didn't catch it on Facebook Live today, make sure you tune into CAT TV, where they'll be running it, as well as GNAT if you're up in Manchester. But also go to swvtchamber.com, and the video will live live there for a while. And again, thank you, Thomas and Pete, for taking a little bit out of your day and educating some of our members.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. We appreciate the opportunity.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.